Yes.
Welcome to all the listeners. This is once again your host, Shailesh, bringing you, as always, some of the most amazing people who have contributed to our country and to our nation. And this is the right time to get on with those people back on track with people like we have got a special guest today. I don't want to name her. You know her, who she is, what she is up to at this point of time. But she is here today to talk about her visions. And this is a critical time for our country and our nation. We have been through a lot, but she has seen it all for the last couple of decades. And she has worn many hats. So you name it, and she is there. Particularly the burning issues today that we are facing, the crime, and who can tell better than the Honorable Judith Collins with me today to talk about her visions. But also she has got other side of the coin today that we are going to uncover from her, which is also important for our nation to take further in science, innovation, and technology. And we are going to talk a little bit about that as well, particularly AI. How is it going to behave for our country? And who knows better than the experts that we are going to bring Judith Collins to this show of me. Thank you so much, Judith, for your esteemed time that you have taken at a time when you are busy, and we know that. But also, we are also equally important for my listeners to understand that what are you up to and what is your visions for our country this time. We need to see you back on the 14th. It's not far off, so that we can talk once again about all those things that we want. But let's today discover and uncover from you. Tell us something about your visions currently for this election, which is very critical and very important from all angles. Welcome, Judith.
Thank you very much, Shailesh, and thank you for having me here today. Yes, it's only 4 more sleeps until the election day. It is really important that we decide what sort of country we want to be. And my vision for the country is that we become an extremely outward thinking, positive country that is all about growing our economy and embracing the fact that we need to keep up not only with the rest of the world, but we need to constantly keep improving. So whether it's in education, whether it's in science, whether it's in medicine, everything we need to be doing needs to be trying to be the best. And I feel very strongly that this is the most important election that I can remember in my lifetime. And that is because I think we are in serious danger as a country of becoming fixated on ourselves or on our neighbours, instead of thinking we have so many advantages in life and we need to be thinking far more about how we can be growing the economy and helping others by doing that, because that's how we get the money to do what we need to do to help people in need. And technology and science are very much part of that. And as you've rightly said, I've been involved in many portfolios. But we need to bring back respect for the rule of law. We need to have consequences for criminal behaviour, particularly violent behaviour, and we need people to feel safe in their own homes. And that's why it's something I'm very happy to talk about, or anything else you want to talk about.
Fantastic, fantastic. I want to start with Judith, as about the cost of living that everybody is talking about. And before that, everybody is talking about change. I want to talk about what is change for you means, really. Is it just changing of political parties? Is it changing of just political people? Or is it a real change that everybody wants to see in their life? What's change means to you?
Well, for me, it's very much changing the outlook of the country. We've seen the very divisive situation in New Zealand, and I think it became much worse during and after COVID. Very much permission given to hate people because they don't agree with you type behaviour. And I think that what we really do need to have is a positive vision that includes growing the economy. You can't get past that. And the cost of living is just crippling families. And we see it every day. We see it in the supermarket. We see it in my electorate office in Papakura. We see people who, through no fault of their own, simply can't make ends meet. And that means that governments have to play their part in bringing down inflation. It means not adding extra cost onto businesses, not adding extra cost like fuel taxes onto people. And it also means not wasting the money that the government has been borrowing. And so we see what happens. The interest rates go up, rents go up, people can't cope, and it's not their fault. So we've got to change that. And without a clear pathway through to growing the economy, it's just going to get worse. And we already know many people are looking elsewhere to move to. We need to have more people here. We need people who want to work. So
also, we need people to retain, isn't it? The educated
right.
people that we have got in our country who take education from our country and then they go elsewhere to deploy their knowledge, which is really a sad. It shouldn't be the case.
That's right. And that's why we're offering things like the bonding situation for doctors and nurses so that they can actually study here. They can then pay off their student loan by being here. They get that most of that written off. And that's the sort of thing that makes a big difference. It can keep people here. And having been kept here during those years when they're normally out finding a life partner, it's much easier to keep them there from then on because they get into jobs and they, where people have their first job is so often where they end up staying.
So according to you, what sort of, when we talk about social, you have put many hats and the realities, ground realities and the communities that you have worked with all sorts. When it comes to social economic development or social economic stage of our country, when particularly related to cost of living, housing, benefits, welfare, all of that, family, all that matters, education and health, you see there is a lots of things that have gone in a direction which you probably realize that this is what has gone. How would you like to see as your priority for all these things to handle or to deal with it? And what's the change of direction you're going to make according to you should happen, really?
Yeah, well, it's not that difficult for a government, a prime minister and ministers and senior people in government to set the tone of how we speak about each other and our place in the world. And so that can make a big difference. And I noticed it when I was Minister of Police and Corrections on 2 occasions. If we back the police to do their job and the police officers on the front line know that they're going to be supported by their minister and the government, then they will get on and do their job. And if they feel that they're going to be criticised or called racist or called something else, they're less likely to want to put themselves on the line as such. So it is really important. And I think too is that we need to start talking a lot more about the wonderful contributions that business and farmers bring into the economy, into the country. And I heard someone saying the other day, I won't name them, these people are doing something for profit. What's wrong with that? By the way, profit means that someone's paying taxes. Taxes are what pay for everything else. And the foolish person who said it hadn't thought through that when they do things for a salary, that's essentially their profit on their time. So what were they talking about? The answer is it's about belittling the contribution and the necessity for business to be able to be involved in much of our lives. Otherwise, frankly, nothing much gets done. And we've seen that, haven't we?
I agree totally. And I think this is the definition and the education and the awareness comes, isn't it? And people like yourself who are not just being in the community, but also have that level of understanding and education and, all those things that you have already inherited with your own. I mean, I remember you are also having a portfolio of ACC at one time, and also I think you are the 5th ranked woman, first in the women's category when you were appointed in the National Party first.
I think I might have been the first at that stage.
Yeah, you are the first at that stage. I remember that. And not only that, but so in the space of, development of when it comes to women's rights and entitlements, and also overall, it's not about gender, but it's all about development of everyone. And I think we were looking into everyone's portfolio and everyone to develop. So from that angle, what you have seen, also you were Ministry of Justice, which is also you want to do justice, fair pay for everyone, equity for everyone, which is who better to ask you this type of questions that I was inclined. That what's in your view today that we are seeing, when we wanted to do pay equity, we have seen the other side of the coin. They are doing the pay equity and all of that, and the gender equity and all sorts of things. What exactly should happen at this point of time for you when it comes to as your key priority, really?
Well, I think we've said quite clearly that we support work to bring about a form of pay equity in the country and to have people paid properly for their jobs. We understand that. But we can't do much if we don't have any money, and we can't just magic the money up. I mean, we've heard from the left in politics that they want to have a wealth tax. Well, all that means, and it's been tried overseas, is that people with wealth leave, and that means there is nothing to tax. So you end up losing a lot more, and worse than that, you lose people who actually want to contribute to the country through business and through starting up new forms of business. You end up becoming a smaller minded place, and that's I think we've become really sad, and we need to really, as Chris Luxon said, and then got criticised for it, but I support him on it, we need to get our mojo back. We need to start thinking, like we could do things, not we could tell everyone else off, which is what we've become something of under the current government, telling lots of other countries off and telling people how to run their lives instead of just getting out and doing something.
Yeah. So in terms of the businesses, we want to touch on that with a lot of small businesses in our country. And we saw they were struggling during COVID because it was natural to struggle. But then after that, they had to, as you said, we want to get back your mojo. And as your election said, the leader, which is quite right. We want to get back to that stage where we were before. And to do that, we have to do lots of take reformative actions and decisions rather than the status quo or the way traditionally people think that this will go away automatically. It won't, right? So in reform, so when it comes to reformative, that's where people get scared about change or what's going to happen if this is going to go or this is going to come. It's a little different world that people are in. How are you going to make that transition quite easy for people to understand, whether they are in business, whether they are in small doing jobs or in professionals, how to get that confidence back into the people?
Well, I think you lead by example. And if we're looking at the science and tech areas, it's about celebrating the people who are doing great work and saying, gosh, isn't it great someone's done this? That means maybe other people could do something similar. Celebrating success is so important. And I think it's also important to understand that sometimes people try and they fail. That doesn't mean to say that's bad. It just means that they didn't win this time, but next time their business, their idea, their scientific discovery might end up being a world leader, and it might save a lot of people a lot of heartache. So just accepting that not everything works well, but be prepared to try it, and that I think is really important. And I know people sometimes say I'm a little bit too positive about things, but I don't think it's possible to be too positive. I think we have to be. And I look at things like crime, and I think about all these small businesses that have just been hit by all this crime and teenagers not at school and doing all this sort of thing and being run by gangs. There are answers to this. We just need to be prepared to try them and get on and do it. And we know because we've had to deal with things similar before, and we, understand that one of the first things we have to always have is a respect for the rule of law. The rule of law means everyone is subject to the law. That doesn't mean some people are subject to the law. It means everyone. And that means it should be equal law for everyone, not somebody doesn't get punished because of some particular reason, someone else does for the same offences. No. The rule of law means everyone is subject to the same law. And
I
we've got to
agree
bring
with
that
that
back
concept.
because I think it's been under threat.
Mm. Absolutely. And that is one of the democratic right of everything. I think this is one of the insights you gave. So just on that subject, you had seen this before as well. When you rightly said before, when you made that comment that we are seeing violent crime rather than just crime. Today's what we are seeing is a violent crime, which was so much in New Zealand, particularly. Our nation was not that. What are the reasons you think? Is there a number of reasons after COVID? We have seen a lot. In your world, in your vision, why this has taken so much place? Is it there are a lot of number of reasons? Could be the mental health, could be the access to social economic benefits, or is it the financial, or is it something the 501 treaty that we did with Australia could be a cause, but we don't know. But what, according to you, this violent has taken place, and how you think we can actually manage this?
Well, we have to stop for a start looking at perpetrators of violent crime and calling them victims, because they're not. The victims are the people who are actually victimized by them, and stop making excuses for this behavior. Because most people do not undertake violent crime. Most people are law-abiding. The vast majority of New Zealanders of every walk of life, every age group, every ethnicity, every faith or no faith, almost everybody doesn't do that. So what is wrong with these ones? And the answer is normally it's from their families, or they've gotten with the wrong crowd. And their families may be gang members, for instance, and they're taught that this is what you do. But there are no consequences that people see. So they see this sort of behavior and they see no consequences. So therefore, there's no point being frightened of anything, because you just get home detention, or which is basically being sent to your room. You might be put on a course to tell you that you should feel better. But ultimately, there are no consequences. And I think, and I'll put some blame onto the government for this, because their one policy that they seem to have delivered on is a 30% reduction in the prison population.
Right. Yeah.
Now, that is okay as long as it's a 30% reduction in crime. But no, we've had massive increases in violent crime. And so what's actually happened is the message has gone out to the courts and to everybody involved that we don't want any more people in prison, that we absolutely don't have to have. And so we've got a whole lot of people who are not facing consequences. I think it's a very important message is to bring back the 3 strikes law. The 3 strikes law that says if you undertake violent crime, you are going to end up eventually staying there for up to the rest of your life. If you don't send very strong messages, unfortunately, the people we're talking about, they just doesn't get through to them.
No, I agree totally. This is a very good insight, because just saying that we want reduction in poverty or reduction in prison doesn't really gives the wrong message. It definitely goes the other side of the message, could be a different meaning. And the government agencies start doing that thing and ignoring the basic cause and basic source, and what is the cause that you are doing this for, basically. Yeah. So that's a strong message, Judith. I really appreciate that. So all listeners, you can see this is coming from an expert, coming from a person who is actually been there, done there, and she knows what she's talking about. So I think it is quite important for everyone to understand we all need change. We all need less crime, but then we all also need to take decisions and responsible for our own actions as well, as she rightly said. So the families that they come from, is there something that you can do with a rehabilitation program that you are going to be mentoring, or you're going to be doing all sorts of things to help these families?
Yes, and I can speak from experience, because when we became the government in 2008 and I took over the corrections portfolio, the first thing we did is to find out that we only had 3 rehabilitation services, rehabilitation services in 3 of our prisons. in the drug and alcohol area, which is one of the biggest areas, and within the first 3 years we doubled that, and then we went on to put them in every single prison. So we've had a real track record around rehabilitation, and yes, it does work, but then you have to follow it up outside of prison as well. And you've got to follow it up. I mean, I brought in the ban on smoking in prisons, and that's still in place and is very much now a positive thing, because people can see that that's another addiction that people are able to break. If they can break that addiction, then they can break a lot of other addictions. So we found it, we can do it. The problem is you've got to be really prepared to do it. And some of the best places for some of the people we're talking about with their particularly drug abuse and their methamphetamine abuse might well be a stay in prison. And the reason is really sometimes you've got to do something pretty severe to get through that message that, and it's a place, where some people, they go into prison, can't get methamphetamine, and it is a way of breaking them on. They also get a lot of help getting off it. So that is important. I don't want to see people go to prison, but there are some people who need to go to prison for their own help, for their own health, for their own future. And by the way, for the rest of societies, particularly families, who are the people who actually suffer from them the most, particularly their spouses and their children.
I wanted to talk, moving away from this a little bit, in terms of your ACC portfolio and currently the situation of health sector that we are seeing. Lots of people wait time and all sorts of things that are happening. But with regard to the ACC as well, like people are complaining that we are not getting fairly treated by ACC, or people are abusing, or people think that they are not getting proper ACC support. And that's what I wanted to touch on. That is that something that is really, because at this time of the time when people need help, not from health point of view and everything, but mainly ACC's job also is to rehabilitate and to make sure that they go back to work on time and stuff. But if they are not getting treatment on time itself, then it's a delay in their treatment and in delay in recovery. Is there anything that you think can throw some light on this current scenario of ACC?
Well, I was Minister of ACC for 3 years, and certainly we deal with quite a lot of ACC issues in my electorate office in Papakura.
Yes.
ACC, of course, is a unique scheme. There's occasionally some countries have tried something similar, but ours has been around now since the 1970s. And it is very good, but it is all about injury. So it means basically that you lose the right to sue for injury, but you do, however, get treatment and rehabilitated back into work. And I think that's the big thing. It doesn't do as much of that rehab that people might like to see in some cases. And I think what's happened too is that post-COVID, people do feel that they can't get the help that they need.
Yes.
And that's something which I think the ingoing Minister of ACC is going to have to deal with, how to be more efficient and effective. But, the ACC system itself is a very good system, and it saves people going to court and ending up basically spending all their life savings on things when it is a good system. But the point is it needs to be efficient and effective, and it needs to rehabilitate as much as possible. In some cases, I've got to say, there's a few disappointments I've seen, but generally is a good system. But it does need to always be very aware that people don't have the choice. You don't get a choice as to whether or not you use it.
Yeah. Just related to that also is something which is insurance. We've found during the floods, lots of houses and lots of insurance companies were not really able to give any much help or support in that terms when it comes to claims. And that is also one of the critical area now people are going to face, and the insurance premiums might go up because of the floods and because of the land.
Well, I can tell you that insurance premiums have gone up very significantly, and I've seen a recent invoice myself, and it's just staggering what people are expected to pay. I think we're going to have a real problem unless we can get on top of this, insurance companies, because what we are seeing now is some pretty fierce invoicing for people, and a lot of people won't be able to afford it. The problem is, if you have a mortgage, then you're under your mortgage, you're obliged to have insurance. And that's the issue for people. And so, maybe we need a bit more competition in the insurance.
Yeah, we do need more competition. I agree totally. Now I'm coming to my favorite subject, which is what I wanted to pick your brain, Judith, is science, innovation, technology, all the things, what a portfolio you are having today. And tell me something about that space, your visions for our country as a nation, that where we are at.
Well, thank you, Shailesh. Shailesh, I look at our economy, and we are very dependent on primary industries like ours. And people don't always understand that one of the reasons that we are so successful in dairying and wool production and meat production is actually because on kiwi fruits generally is because of science, technology, innovation, that we have had generations of people who have been involved in science, making sure that we keep up with it and actually go ahead of the rest of the world. So that's why. It's not because of anything special otherwise. We've a long way away from the rest of the world. We have often had tyranny of distance, trying to get products to market, but the products that we send are the best in the world. And that is actually all about not only the producers and the quality control, but also about the science and tech and innovation. So it is a natural fit for us to take that work and to say, how can we do more with it as well? So I see us as having an opportunity as a country with our 8 universities, our 7 Crown Research Institutes, our Callaghan Innovation, and our 25 different private research institutes, to say, hey, let's be the science hub of the world. Let's be the place where people come to try stuff. Let's be the people who export science and make some money off it as well, by the way, license it. And so what we've said is, number one thing that's been holding us back, because I've asked the scientists, number one thing holding us back is the effective ban on GE and GM in New Zealand. And just about everyone else has moved on except New Zealand. And I approached the minister for this last year and said, let's work together cross-party and get this sorted. And she said, well, my colleagues won't support it. Well, I went ahead anyway, talked to all the scientists, and they came back and said, this is what you need to do. I looked at Australia. They've changed it. We need to have a dedicated regulator to have the safe and ethical use of biotechnology, or GM and GE. And we need to streamline approvals for trials for the non-GM and GE products that are being used elsewhere, which we can't currently go through yet. So we're going to completely modernise this and bring us up to the 21st century instead of having arguments from the 20th. But the point is too, is that the technology and the science has just moved on so much. And it means, for instance, that we and I know this from the scientists working, we have people who can produce, if needed, a new variety of apple, which would actually be able to grow and be harvested within a year, as opposed to 7 years. So imagine if you were in Hawke's Bay and you'd been taken out by a cyclone with your orchard, and you could do that. That is the work that's going on right now in labs in this country. We have people who are constantly pushing the boundaries, but those boundaries are simply about our own imagination, about an understanding of what's possible. But also, we don't. When I grew up, we didn't have kiwi fruit. We had what was called Chinese gooseberries, which were very hard, very green, and not particularly sweet. And now look what we produce. Well, that's actually because of science, innovation. And as the scientists have said to me, it might take them 7 years to produce one of those new varieties using the traditional method, but they could do that within basically a matter of months if they're allowed to give nature a bit of a move along. So that, it's incredible. So we need to be there, because other countries are. It's looking like idiots sitting back there going, well, we don't want to touch anything because something might go wrong. Actually, things are going wrong and we need to fix them. And we also need solutions on climate change. And this is where they come in. So,
Yeah.
do I love all this stuff? Yes, I do. But also in tech,
Mhm.
putting aside the biotech side, we need some more people who really are into tech and can help us from outside. That's why we have an international graduates visa for people, not just in tech, but
Yes.
science and elsewhere.
Yes.
A global growth tech visa, a digital nomad visa. And we're also sorting out the tax issues around startups. And we're going to have a minister for technology. So there is a champion at the cabinet table for tech and innovation science. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that will be great to giving some tax benefits for the startups, for technologies, and for creating that environment to deal with the climate change and all that. As we saw these floods, Hawke's Bay, and Gisborne and all, who are considered as our fruit bowl areas, and we saw lots of. But if we had dealt with this with our technology, with AI. So AI, I'm coming to AI. The final is the AI. What do you think about AI, the challenges, the improvements or the development or deployment and developments with regard to AI? How do you see AI? At what stage we are in as a country to deal with AI or to embrace AI?
Yeah, so I think, Shailesh, it's really useful to remember that we're actually using AI all the time. I mean, I've started using the Chat GPT to do drafts for me of speeches and things, and then I go change them. But at least, I've got a draft of what they think, or it thinks, whatever. And I find too is that we're using it in things like, Google Maps or search engines, all sorts of things, and it's already being used. Siri, by the way, is not living in my phone. It's just it's AI. So I think we need to realize it has huge potential to assist us. And yes, there is potential for it to be misused, actually huge potential for it to be misused. But then, so it's true for everything, isn't it? What I would like us to do is to have ethical frameworks around the use of AI, government to adopt that, and businesses are already doing that now, but we need to make sure that we keep up on top of what's going on. So we have we're using the Privacy Act, or the current government put that in place around the use of data, which is essentially what AI is using. And we supported that because we think that's very important. But we always have that challenge with the rest of the world, which we don't have control over, but which we may be using their AI-driven or AI-enabled solutions for things as to what happens to that information. A lot of that is around us working very multi-nationally, so that we work across borders. We already have the OECD, of which we are a member, and where we have worked previously on cross-border solutions. That is a good place for us to start, I think, because to be frank, we are 5 million people. We are the size of Melbourne.
Yes.
We are size of Melbourne in the country, largely United Kingdom, and we are not the biggest market in the world. So we need to be a little bit careful. The current government said they're going to have an app tax. They're going to tax people on digital. Like, we're trying to get ourselves all as digital as we can. That's not the time to be taxing. But what is important, and we don't need big fights with the big tech companies, because ultimately we can work with them if they want to work with us. And any fights we have are best if they're done multinationally, so we're not on our own, because we've seen what happens to countries when they go out on their own and they think they're going to do something. Suddenly they just cut off all the use of that app. So why don't we be sensible, work cross multi-country, and make sure that we are on the right side for New Zealand?
As you rightly said about AI, just like Facebook, when it came, people were misusing. Now we think that people are more using. It was for the good, but it was misused for badly abuse. Same thing if AI, but Facebook is something of social media up till before AI. AI is why different, because everything social media, digital, the humans were telling them whatever to do and they were doing the technology. But this AI technology, probably I heard that it's going to tell humans what to do. How do you see that as a scary part for 5 million people, us?
Yeah, well, it is. It can be scary, and I think that that's a genuine concern to make sure that AI is used for good, not for evil. But I'd say to people, it's actually the worst things that ever happened have been from people, not AI that we know of. But do I think that it has the capacity to wreak havoc in the world? Well, yes, just as I've seen people wreak havoc in the world. So we know that AI, generative AI, could well go on to do all sorts of things itself, and we understand that could be very harmful. I also know people are likely to do something pretty terrible, so we just need to be aware. You can't stop it coming into the country; it's here anyway. We're all using it.
Yeah.
But what we can do is to work again multinationally to make sure that we are keeping up with what similar countries, liberal democracies, are doing, and making sure we're actually feeding off a lot of the work that they're doing. Because, as I say, we're a small nation, we have limited resources. We're much better to be on the side of our friends to make sure that we're benefiting from that as well, their work.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with us borrowing it.
I heard a very scary thought when I was talking about AI, and somebody said that, humans were preparing or making a bomb, and then humans made the bomb, and then humans told this bomb is to be put in this location or that location. But now AI is going to design the bomb, and it's going to decide humans where it needs to go rather than humans deciding where it needs to go. So that was the scary thing.
That's right. And that's all about humans have programmed it to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty scary. And I think when you come to things like resources as well and use of resources, you can't leave that to AI, because that's nobody's responsible. And you don't want to have anything where no one's responsible. You need someone to blame, someone to hold to account.
Yes. So what's the Ministry of Business Innovation's role going to be in your world? It should be for these new startups, new techs, grants, taxes, so that we can give you more resilient and we can give more encouragement to these.
Well, obviously, we've still got to get through the election, see what comes out on the other side. But I'd love to see them. And I've heard some quite good things about some of the people in there. They've been doing some good work helping startups. But the tax thing that we're looking at is all about the treatment of share options. It's not about giving out lots of money. We have to understand is that we need more people in this country who want to invest in businesses and startups. So we need to encourage people to want to do that. And we also have other mechanisms of encouraging it without handing out money, because we're going from a $5 billion loss of, or basically $5 billion debt, to now $100 billion debt in 6 years. I mean, it's extraordinary what we're going to take over. So we have to be very careful with money, but nothing wrong with us asking other people to come either in New Zealand already, or someone wants to invest in a pension fund out of Canada or something wants to invest here. Well, we would constantly be saying no to everything. It's not like we've got too much money.
Do you think, is it because people think some people think it's the control that we are giving and the control that we want? How do you see that as?
People are often, it's quite interesting, because there is this mindset that if someone from another nation comes and buys something like a house, for instance, to live in, that somehow that's taking it away from New Zealand. No one's taking the house anywhere. Nobody can do that. And I often find that is it's very what I'd call dog whistle politics. It's very xenophobic, without realizing that some of the people who come here and buy a house end up staying here, becoming part of the fabric of our rich and multicultural country, and contribute. So why would I be threatened by that? And the answer is, I have no idea why people would be threatened, because frankly, I'm, like everyone in New Zealand, we either came from came as immigrants, or their families came as immigrants, or even for Māori who came in, 1,000 years ago, immigrants. So it's not like we suddenly just grew out of the ground one day.
True. That's good. That's very good insight. I can't resist of asking you this question. I know it's a little bit out of, but I was watching the debates of both the leaders, Chris Lipkins and Chris Luxon, and was very interesting to see most of the policies that as a progressive political parties that I have seen in the last 2 decades. But this time around is quite different, but they all possibly where we were all agreeing to lots of things I saw between National and Labour when it comes to development of human development or, individual development or growth. But there are different ways of doing, which is definitely identifiable. However, in your view, there are some small parties have come up as well this time. For the first time, we are seeing a lot of good surge, which is a good coalition could be, and which is a good democratic process could be. But in your view, what's your view that, is there a possibility, this is just out of the box I'm asking, that National Labour has always been for the people, by the people, and of the people, as we say about democracy in New Zealand, what I've seen. Do you think that some of the policies or majority of the policies you want to do similarly to the development, to the help of the country? Rather than having a difference of, scaring about what's happened to the people at this stage when they need the support, confidence, and everything, you think these 2 political parties can come together at any time in the future, or even this time when they need it, the people need it the most? Or do you think it's
no,
just a matter of...
So. But what we do wherever possible is to work together in Parliament on various pieces of legislation. And it is true that when either National or Labour is leading the government, that the other often votes with the government on various pieces of legislation where there's no particular disagreement. So it's not as though we're just opposed to each other, but we do have a totally different view of life. So Labour tends to view the government and centralisation of things as the answer to solving problems, and we believe much more that people are far more capable of spending their own money and making their own decisions, because we think people are all given, free will and a brain. So we trust the people a lot more, and I think that's the point, really, is that their alignment is far more with central government, central planning, and ours is much more about people being in their families and making individual decisions as well. So we just have a different philosophy of life. But there are some areas where we do agree, and that and that is pretty normal. We've always looked at Labour's legislation that they've been putting forward and saying, is it possible for us to support this? And I presume they do pretty much the same.
Because there are lots of things at stake at this moment for people, for all sorts of people, whether it is they are doing business or whether they are doing any professional work or whether they're doing creating business or startups. There's a lot of at stake. And they are looking at the current situation and the political parties that they want to be confident that they will get that support. So with that note, I wanted to just make your last final comment in terms of for all the listeners who are listening, what's your message to them in terms of this critical at stake election where we all need support and confidence from any government that comes along? But what's your message to all the listeners?
My message, thank you very much. Our message is to everybody is that if you want to be part of a go-ahead progressive country that looks to the world and says there are opportunities for us to do business and to grow the economy and to have law and order and to get down the cost of living, then you've got to party vote National. No mucking around, no going off into little parties, none of that nonsense. Just get back onto it, get our country back on track.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Judith. This was wonderful to have touch on various subjects, but also getting the insights from a person who has been there, done there, and also you have pulled out this country many times, and you have seen that. So to all the listeners, my message is please make a detailed, informed information that Honorable Judith Collins today has conversed with us and told you guys and told to me and everyone. It's all about making an effort to go there and vote. And if you don't vote, then you don't get those changes that we are looking for or the confidence that we are looking for. So with that note, I wanted to make a final request to you, Judith. Give us the better version of when these people who are listening, they are looking for change. But the final message, what does change means to them, to you, to everyone individually? What is change according to you, the final message?
Oh, a big opportunity, actually. It's opportunities. It's
Right.
the point of being here. Do you want to be here, or would you rather be in some other country? If you want to be here, you vote for change, because that's what's going to, we're going to need to have change to bring about a positive attitude for the country, to get our mojo back, to get back on thinking that we can be the best in the world at so much of what we do. So let's just get that back.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful message, Judith. So all listeners, as you can see, you don't have to go across the ditch, because the change is coming, and change can come with your vote. The change can come, I think, and you have to stay here so that we can develop here, we can enjoy here, and we can all support each other. Thank you so much, Judith.
Thank you very much, Shailesh. And thank you,
It was wonderful to talk to you, and we will bring back to you come 14th October or even after that to talk on various topics, to have your knowledge and experience that you bring back to this country.
Thank you very much.